Welcome, or hopefully welcome back to another episode of the Reluctant Entrepreneur Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Jason Duncan, entrepreneur, business coach, author, and host of the Root of All Success podcast. Jason didn't start out to be a business owner. In fact, he began his career as a school teacher, but when he was laid off in 2010, he became an entrepreneur by necessity. Out of that challenge, he built a multi-million-dollar company that gained recognition from both Inc. and Entrepreneur magazines. From there, Jason developed the XOS Method and founded the Exeter Club, where he helps entrepreneurs design companies that run smoothly without them, what he calls exit without exiting. I might refer to it as silent exiting. He's also the author of Exit Without Exiting, a playbook for business owners who want freedom from day-to-day operations without having to sell their companies. On this episode, we'll talk about Jason's unexpected journey into entrepreneurship, the lessons he's learned building and scaling businesses, and his insights from interviewing top performers on the Root of All Success podcast. And that all begins right now. Jason Duncan, good to see you again, my friend.
Good to see you, Mike.
And I say good to see you again because for my viewers or listeners that may not know, I was on your show. So this is revenge now, right? So
you're getting me back.
A little quid pro quo. Well, thanks for agreeing to be my guest. I really appreciate it.
Honored to do it, man. Honored to do it.
When I was on your show, I was admiring your professionalism. I'm jealous of your set. It's pretty gnarly looking. I've got the fake, slightly blurred out brick wall behind me, and it looks like you've got a real organic set behind you. So
it's just my home office with cool lighting. That's all.
Cool lighting, yeah. Isn't it amazing what $30 LED color lighting on Amazon can get you? But
that's right.
It looks really cool. So let's kind of start at the beginning. You describe yourself as an entrepreneur by necessity. I think quite literally you became too cool for school, right? You were a teacher and lost your job. Is that accurate?
Yeah. So in 2010, the district where I was working was going through budget cuts, just like I think every district in the country coming out of the Great Recession. There's just a lot of constriction on finances, taxes, tax base was going down, et cetera. Just people weren't spending money. And so I was the last guy hired in the building. I didn't have tenure in that district yet. And so when they had to make two cuts in the building, I was one of the two that they had to cut, even though I was the number one teacher in the county, according to the test grade, the test scores. I was really good at my craft, but that's not how they made decisions back then.
Yeah, you got some union stuff going on and things like that, right? So there are rules, right? Those who have been there the longest, who may not be the best, but they've just managed not to get fired for 40 years, they stay, right? And
that's right.
And some of the up and coming teachers that show promise, that excel, you're just a victim of your seniority, I guess. So this show is called The Reluctant Entrepreneur. Not all my guests are reluctant entrepreneurs. Some were born with the entrepreneurial gene. That was not me. You kind of fall into that category. Not that you were reluctant to do it, but that certainly wasn't your first choice. You were an entrepreneur by necessity because your teaching job went away. So
yeah.
Was there any part of you that had some entrepreneurial desire, and this was just the light nudge off the cliff, or was it just a complete 180 in your plans?
Yeah, it was a complete 180. I had started a business back in 1995. At the end of 95, my wife and I had gotten married that spring. And I was working as a part-time youth minister at a local church, and I just needed to make some money. And we went to this little conference, and they were promoting the internet and World Wide Web, and hey, there's websites, these things that you can build. And so I decided to start a little part-time website design company. That was in 95, but I didn't know what I was doing. I certainly wasn't an entrepreneur. I didn't have any idea what that was like. And that lasted for maybe 6 months. I mean, it didn't last long at all. And that was my only foray into entrepreneurship or business ownership until 2010. And then in 2010, I had a friend who came to me and he said, hey, I've got this business idea that we're going to create these hydrogen generators for cars. And I want you to go into business with me and help me do that. And I said, are you nuts? That sounds insane. I'm a history teacher. I don't know anything about hydrogen or science, or I don't know any of this stuff.
Right.
But he convinced me to do it. And we started the business kind of, I was very reluctant to do it, to be honest. To call out the name of your show, I was reluctant to do it, but I trusted my friend. I thought, well, it'd be fun. So with no intention of ever leaving school, leaving teaching, we started this business. I went out and borrowed $5,000 from somebody I knew that I thought had money, and he loaned us the money, and we bought the equipment, and we started working on it nights, weekends, spring break, over the summer. It was fun. It was cool and interesting. It didn't make any money, but it was very interesting. And then the following spring is when my principal sat down and said, hey, man, you're not going to be able to come back next year. And so my first thought was, go get another teaching job. And I tried, and there were no teaching jobs to be had. The second thought was, I'll just go get a job somewhere. And I was interviewing, Mike. I actually, there was one really good opportunity I was interviewing for. And, but I also was kind of like, but I think this other business could work. Now I'd abandoned the hydrogen stuff, and I said, well, look, we can't do this. That's not going to make money. We can do LED lighting. That'll make money. So we started working on that, or I started working on that because the business partner left, but I started working on that. And I'm like in both worlds thinking, which one's going to hit first? And I kept putting this guy off. And he finally called me out and he said, look, man, you've been putting off every meeting I'm trying to get with you. Obviously, you don't want the job, so I'm withdrawing our interest in you. And that forced me to do something. So I told my wife, I said, look, babe, if I don't have a deal by August the 15th, I will go get a real job. Like in my business, if I don't have a deal in the business. The reason I picked August 15th is because that was the last check I was going to get from the state as a teacher. Well, on August the 12th, I rode the elevator up to the third floor conference room at a local regional hospital, made the pitch of my life, and we got it. It ended up being like a $2.3 million deal over the course of the next 3 years. And that was it. It's like, okay, I'm in. I'm an entrepreneur now. I can do this. And so first year in business, we cracked $1 million in revenue and never looked back.
You know, it's funny. I refer to people who watch or listen to the show know I frequently refer to the business gods. Some may interpret that as God, the God. Some may interpret it as the universe. It really doesn't matter because regardless of the influence, I find that life allows you to make choices. God allows you to make choices. But every once in a while, there's influences, little blinders like, okay, this, not this way. Almost like that scene in Star Wars, these are not the droids you're looking for, just the little influence where you end up with, you think you have 20 choices and then all of a sudden, 18 of them are taken away, and then you're down to 2, and then I don't know. It's just one of those things. Mine was that way. No part of me wanted to run a business. No part of me wanted to own a business, but my options just kept falling off the table, and to the point where this was my only option. And looking back, it had meaning. It had purpose. It was part of a greater plan or a destiny, but you just don't see it at the time. It feels like rejection or failure, but really I think in retrospect, that's part of your destiny. You were supposed to do what you're doing now, and you were just the last one to get that memo. Does that sound about right?
Well, I do believe that God directs my steps, and I believe that He is out for my best interests. And I know that I didn't want to lose my teaching job. That was a devastating blow to me. That was a bad day when I got that news. And yet, over the course of the next 10 years, my life changed significantly financially. And there was a lot of things changed because you go from an unemployed school teacher to millionaire. That's a big change.
Sure.
So I accept that as a gift, even though it started off as this is the worst day I've ever had.
Right.
And I've had lots of those worst days ever since then. And each time I believe that, as Napoleon Hill says, there is a seed of an equivalent benefit in every step back and every heartache and in every bad circumstance. So I believe that even in the bad circumstances, there's a seed of something great that's going to be born out of that.
Yeah, I believe that when something ends, it just brings in the next. It's
Yeah.
not over. It's okay, next, and life is just a revolving roll of nexts, or the new, or however we want to phrase it. And when we don't have our eyes open to the new, it seems devastating when the old is over. And but that's something that time and perspective and altitude tend to bring. Looking back, what were your biggest mindset shifts that you had to make when you transitioned from a teacher to a business owner? Obviously, when you're a teacher, you can order the kids to do certain things. Maybe less today than when I was a kid, but you are kind of at least the person that's supposed to be in control. When you're a business owner, you're the bottom of that control totem pole, at least at first. What kind of mindset shifts did you have to make?
Well, I think at first they were subtle and not even. I don't even think I realized what was happening because I'd never been a business owner except for that stint that I explained earlier, which really doesn't count. But I'd never really been a business owner. I didn't understand. I simply thought this is just the job I've created for myself, and I will build this to make as much money as I possibly can. And that was the idea. It was, I'm going to do this and I'm going to grind it out and I'm going to do as good a job as I can. But I still had to get up every day. I still had to go to work, so to speak, even though work was in my home, my home office. So I had to go to work and do what needed to be done. The mindset shifts really happened much later. The subtle ones and the actions that I needed to take to run a business obviously started immediately, but the big ones changed later. For example, I didn't even know what entrepreneurship was. I didn't know how to spell the word. I didn't understand what that meant.
I still don't know how to spell the word, by the way.
I've learned, there's E's and U's in there. You got to figure out which one.
I know, right? That's a hard one. Yeah.
But I didn't really understand that I was an entrepreneur. I didn't understand what that meant. And then later, as I became aware, I'd go to networking events or business breakfasts, and I started associating with other people who were entrepreneurs. And I thought, oh, well, that is what I am. Okay, well, what does that mean? What do I need to do? And so I had a business partner I brought a business partner on, the guy that had loaned me money to start the business originally. I went back to and said, look, my hydrogen guy, we've parted ways because he doesn't think that what we're going to do with LED lighting is going to work. Would you come in as a minority partner just to kind of help? Because he had some success in business. And my goal was that he was going to help kind of advise me and mentor me into entrepreneurship. And to a large degree he did. But there was a point at which he had stopped and I kept going. It's like, okay, well, now what do I do with this? Because this is a guy that was a mentor and was a helper and a friend. And now, I'm wanting to make changes and make moves that he is not willing to do. So how do I do that? So there were some big changes that happened and about blew up the business, but we were able to push past those changes. But mindset is definitely a big part of who I am now. And I only really started studying it and strengthening my mind back in 2022. That's how long it took me to finally start paying attention to this.
Yeah. Lessons, my experience was lessons would come to me, but they wouldn't land. They would be more anecdotal. And then maybe a few years later, I would realize, wait a minute, I've been shown this 25 times. Now it makes sense, right? Now it makes sense. Now I'm going to incorporate it and not wait for it to be my last option. What were some of the early mistakes that you made and when you transitioned from a teacher to an entrepreneur? And how did you recover from them?
I think there were many, many mistakes, and I could write a whole book on just the mistakes that were made. The ones that come to mind first is that I treated this business like a job, not like an asset. And I didn't learn until many years later that is a that is a fatal mistake for most businesses when you treat it like a job, when it becomes something that requires you to be there to make it work. And Mike, you and I talked on my show, The Root of All Success. You talked about how you had built your business that doesn't require you to be there, and how great it is that your business carries on without you there. That's what we all should keep in mind to begin with. But we don't, because we buy into the hustle and grind culture that Instagram and TikTok tells us that we got to buy into. And it's the grind will lead you to your destiny. No, grind is a season.
It's funny you say that. I was on another show. I was on someone else's show called the Hustle and Grind Podcast. And I almost felt guilty. I'm like, well, I mean, the first 20 years of my business, I was hustling and grinding and doing everything. But then I got to the point where I discovered what you've been teaching, without knowing you. But what a contrast between hustle and grind mentality. And my dad used to say, work smart, not hard.
Yeah.
And that's almost passé kind of saying, but I see the wisdom in that. But you got to get to that point where that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense from day one, but it doesn't land on day one.
No, it doesn't. But that's because we're ignorant. That's because we don't know any better.
Right.
But Mike, if you and I went into business together today, and it was from scratch, we're going to start from scratch. We're going to start this thing, which I don't recommend, by the way. Buy a business, don't start one. But if we went into
it's hard to start one. Yeah.
You and I would do it very differently, wouldn't we? We would not hustle and grind for 20 years. We would say, you know what? Day one, we got to put the people, the systems, the processes in place to make sure this thing can run without any single points of failure. That it can't be relying upon an individual. It has to be relying upon a system. It's got to run no matter who's here. Think of McDonald's. McDonald's can run no matter which, snot-nosed teenager you put in there. It doesn't matter. You can take anybody and pop them in there. You're still going to get burgers and fries that are decent enough for you to keep coming back, but they're not amazing. That's what a repeatable system does. Now, in your business, as an entrepreneur listening to this, what are you doing to get yourself out of the weeds? Because that's the biggest mistake entrepreneurs make. It also shows up when you go to exit a business, because you're going to lose 30 to 60% of your value when an investor or buyer looks at your business and realizes that you're the key, that everything is about you. 30 to 60%. Let's say you're $1 million business. Let's say you're only worth $1 million. Like, that means you could be worth up to $2 million, $1.5 to $2 million if you weren't the key. That's a lot of money to leave on the table because you want the ego of being the guy, the one in charge.
Yeah. Yeah. Obviously, I did that when I first started my business. We're a manufacturing business. We are a factory. We build equipment for the electronics industry. And, that takes people. And I was blessed and cursed with being clever, so I could design the machines. I was a very good designer. I was a horrible assembler, but I would do things that I could do, even if I couldn't do them well, if that meant I didn't have to hire somebody. So I was chief cook and bottle washer for many, many months. And, it's like having a restaurant with two tables. You hit your capacity very, very early, and then you can't grow. You can't scale because it's impossible if you're doing everything. And I noticed that I was doing 2 or 3 things exceptionally well, things I actually still do today, and 100 things exceptionally poorly. But it was enough to, it was starter fluid down the carburetor. It turned the engine over. I probably just spent a little too long doing that before I realized that there was a difference between growth and scale, and I really needed to scale more than I needed to grow. And I had to take my ego and say, hey, little buddy, thanks for being my friend. Stay in this room for a while, and I'll let you out. I'll let you out when no one's around to play, but you're not cool anymore. Because my ego was definitely both my propeller and my anchor, right? So I was grateful for my ego because it caused me to think that I could do something that statistically 80% of businesses can't do. But if it stuck around, you and I wouldn't be having this conversation, at least not about successful businesses. It would be another story. It would be, don't be like this guy. So your company eventually became a multi-million-dollar enterprise. That's been recognized by both Inc. and Entrepreneur Magazine. What were the key factors that drove that growth? I'm sure it wasn't luck. I'm sure it was a lot of skill and wisdom and things like that. But what would you attribute to be the major factors that put you in those magazines?
So Inc. 5000, the dirty secret behind the Inc. 5000 is that they're only looking at top line revenue growth year over year over a 3-year period. And it has to be at least 3 million. I think it's 3 million. I think you have to be at least at 3 million in order just to be in, or maybe it's a million. I don't know. Whatever the numbers, there's a threshold, and they're only looking at growth over the 3-year period. What they don't ask is how much of that money did you keep? So the first year we made it into the Inc. 5000, we were profitable. We had done well. As a matter of fact, we made $1 million that year. The second year we were listed, we lost money, but we were still made the list. So there's this dirty secret, this game that we're playing for these awards of top line revenue. And, we talk about, hey, I run a $50 million company. Hey, I run a $20 million company. Hey, I run a 9-figure company. Okay, that's great. How much money do you keep?
Right.
That's really the issue. So when you say what drove our growth, I think it was the relentless pursuit of top line revenue. And I'm not saying that's the right thing, but that's what drove the growth. I would rather have stayed at a $1 to $2 or even $3 million company and had a net of 20% or more, and be fine, rather than driving a $5-6 million company with a net that's 1% or zero. Like that to me doesn't make any sense. But so many entrepreneurs are chasing the vanity metrics of, I want to be listed in a magazine. Now listen, I've got the plaques on my wall. You can't see it, but they're right there. Got Inc. 5000. There's 2 of them because we were in there twice. Now Entrepreneur Magazine does it a little different. They don't do it on revenue, and they certainly don't do it on profit either, but they're just looking at overall, like entrepreneurial huspa. I don't know what you call it, but like you're just good at your business.
It's the name of the magazine. Yeah.
That award to me was more important than the Inc. because of, it's only 360 companies, not 5,000. And we were, I forget what number, 200 and something. But to be listed there, that was more important because it wasn't just about sheer growth in terms of energy and going and sell. We had landed a national contract with a hospital group, and we'd done, 2 or 3 dozen hospitals that year, and our growth had just skyrocketed in terms of revenue. But what most people don't know is I had to write a letter to the CEO of the company, the hospital, begging for our money because they were short. They had short shifted us, didn't pay us for like 6 months. They owed us $1 million and didn't pay us. And this is a multinational conglomerate. And here I am, a tiny little company in Hendersonville, Tennessee, and they didn't pay us. So what the story doesn't tell is what really happened. So there's a lot to chasing this top line revenue that I think is a mistake.
Yeah, one thing I've discovered is, particularly in the early days of my company, we were always, short of cash, right? Because you're growing. So, you make $1, it costs you $1.25 to make the next $2, and then to get $2, it costs you $3 to get to that point. So, we were always cash flow starved, and so I would have certain lenses on. I would look through my entire business life through the lens of we need to cover payroll for next Thursday. We pay every Thursday. We need to cover payroll for next Thursday. So I was like Midas. I could spin straw into gold. I was good at bringing in money, not profitable money, Jason, but I would do deals, right? And just to cover payroll, because payroll is my problem today. Well, tomorrow profit will be my problem, but today's not tomorrow. That's for another day. I'll work on that later. And I guess, the one thing that made Inc. a little less satisfying maybe than Entrepreneur Magazine was the fact that they didn't care if you made money. They just wanted to look at revenue. If I would have won 100 prizes if it was just top line growth, because I was good at bringing in money. I wouldn't be around to collect those awards. There'd be no wall to hang them on because the business would be gone. But, we do look through life through different lenses, and usually it's, which room's on fire gets the most attention. When you won those awards, did that did that change how you approach running the company, or did it create new challenges, or how did that land on you and the perception of you?
I think what it did, I think, is the full intention behind those awards is about social proof and letting people know that, oh, you're actually good at what you do and you're pretty successful. That's the intent behind the awards. It's a bragging right to
Mm-hmm.
say, look, I won X. It's like being a bestseller. Like there's lots of bestsellers that have crappy books. But to be a bestseller is really cool. You can say I'm a bestseller. Like my book is a bestseller. I also don't think my book's crappy, but maybe somebody does. But getting those awards creates social proof. Now, at the time in that company, did it matter to my potential clients or clients that our company had won Inc. 5000 or Entrepreneur Magazine's awards? No, didn't matter to them at all. Second act, well, maybe the fourth act in my life, because I was a pastor, then a school teacher, then I run into that business, and now I'm a business coach running a mastermind. So in my fourth act, now it matters a lot, because as I'm talking to potential clients who want to say, "Hey, why should I hire you as a business coach?" I am Inc. 5000 two times. I am an Entrepreneur 360. I
Right.
have won Business of the Year award with the Nashville Business Journal. I can go through the accolades.
Someone other than you thinks you're good, right?
Yes, that's the point of those awards. That's the whole idea. And so I coach my clients. They're all applications. You just apply. Now you still have to win based on the metrics, but you don't win if you don't apply. It's like the lottery.
Right.
You're not going to win if you don't play. So I
Right.
tell my clients, go apply for the Inc. Go apply for Entrepreneur 360. Go apply for your local business journal awards. Those things are good for you. You need to have those crystal, things standing on your desk. You need to have it, but don't get wrapped around the axle that means you're successful. And it could
Right.
indicate it, but it doesn't
Right.
mean you're
There's a
successful.
presumption of it. It's not a guarantee. And
Exactly.
but it doesn't hurt to provide legitimacy, credibility, things like that, and
Yeah,
it makes you feel good for a while, right?
that's
That
right.
you're
Yeah,
doing
it's
something
it's
right.
all social proof. And I was sitting down with my coach the other day, and we were looking at my media kit online. And he's a big advocate of everybody needs a media kit. No matter what you do, there needs to be a media kit online about you with everything that you've done. Maybe you've done TED Talks or written books, or you've done speeches, and maybe you've been on CNBC. Whatever it is, that all needs to be listed. And he was looking at all my stuff. He goes, "Look, this is good, but you're burying the lead. Like, you've won these awards, you're not talking about it." It's like, yeah, but so there's this imposter syndrome, even though I won them. Like, well, but he's like, it doesn't matter. You won the award. It needs to be top, front and center. So I think your question was, did it change the way I approach business? No, not really. But today there's a benefit that I'm reaping that I didn't realize when I first won them.
That's great. You coined the concept of exit without exiting, and
Yeah.
what does that mean? And why is it important for business owners to have that at least the knowledge of that, the awareness of that possibility? Because I wasn't aware of that possibility until, quite
Yeah.
frankly, 6 or 7 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I was going to be doing this until I was in the grave, and maybe even from the grave. But what? How'd you get to that point?
So it was actually the phrase came up by accident in a conversation with my, at that time, media coach. Um, what I had done is I had extricated myself from the daily operational control of that business. I was no longer running day to days, and my team was running it. And frankly, I wasn't, I'd only go in maybe the office once a month, and I was doing other things. It was I was doing a lot of coaching on the side. People would ask me to coach them. And I was enjoying that part of my life, because as a coach, now I'm getting to exercise what I learned being a pastor for a decade, and what I learned being an entrepreneur for a decade. Now I'm and a school teacher for a portion of that time. Now I'm getting to put all that together. It's like I get to coach other business owners. So I was loving that. And people would ask, "Hey, Jason, you exited your business?" I'm like, kinda. And like, "Well, did you sell it?" "No, I didn't sell it." "So, but you exited?" "Yeah, I exited without exiting." And so it was kind of, a turn of a phrase that just came up as a way to describe what had happened to me, because people thought I'd sold the business and I didn't. And so I was talking to my business coach, and I kind of told him that, or my media coach, and I told him that story, and he goes, "That's your thing." And I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Exit without exiting. That's your thing." And I said, "Well, I had been saying it, but it didn't resonate in the way that he meant." He's like, "That is your thing. Everybody needs a thing. That's your thing. Nobody's saying that. Exit without exiting is a new thing. Nobody's ever said it before. It's your thing." It's like, okay. So I bought the domain. I started writing a book, and now I started my mastermind. Is called the Exeter Club. That's another word that doesn't exist. The word Exeter, I made that up.
Yeah.
So I've got all these things that are mine, all around the idea of exit without exiting. So what does it mean? Exit without exiting is when you are no longer required to be in your business, and you can do whatever you want with your time, and the business doesn't suffer. That's the most plain way for me to say it. Mike, you have exited without exiting based on your story that you told on my podcast.
Sure.
You have done that. Now, that doesn't mean you're not involved and there's some glass wall between you and the business and you can't pass no, you still own it. It's an asset. The way I teach it is this. If you can imagine for a minute, for those that are watching this, not just listening, I'm going to do this little triangle. So if you can imagine there's a pyramid, a little triangle, and it's divided into 3 sections. The bottom section of the triangle is tier 1. The middle section is tier 2. And the very tip top is tier 3. I want you to think about tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Tier 1 entrepreneurs are owner operators. They're involved in all the daily operations of the business, and they're focused on revenue. Action, activity, and revenue. That's what owner operators are focused on. And that's what most entrepreneurs stay for most of their life. I'd say 90% of entrepreneurs are always going to be owner operators, tier 1. Tier 2 is owner manager. And this is when you're still involved and you're still necessary, but you're not doing everything. You aren't scooping the ice cream. You still order the ice cream. You order it, other people scoop it, but you're still managing it. And you're focused more on systems and people than you are activity and revenue. Now, tier 3, this is where the magic happens. Tier 3 is owner investor. And an owner investor is not involved in the management daily, nor are they involved in the daily operations. They run their business as an asset. It is an investment for them. They pay attention to the finances. They pay attention to the bottom line. They pay attention to how resources are allocated, but they're not involved in daily management. They're not involved in the systems, and they're not involved in the operations. They're owner investors. And so that framework, those 3 tiers of entrepreneurial evolution, is what we teach in our mastermind. Is that, hey, you come in as a tier 1 or tier 2, our goal is to get you to tier 3. How would it be? What would life be like if you got to tier 3, where you've exited without exiting? You're an investor in your business, so to speak. You're not involved in dailies. How cool would that be if it's throwing off a few $100,000 or even $1 million a year, but you don't have to be there? What would you do with your time? You'd go build another business. You'd go do other projects. You'd start some missionary work in Africa or something. You do something else with your time, because entrepreneurs are not going to sit on a beach with a fruity drink forever. That'll be a little season, but you're going to want to go do something else. So that's what exit without exiting is. Now, that being said, it makes sense. There are some times it makes sense to go ahead and pull the ripcord and full exit. And we walk our clients through that. We've got an investment banking team that works with us, and we're helping a few of our clients do that right now to do a full exit. But we focus on get your business to run without you first, then we'll figure out the exit.
Yeah, when I came to the conclusion, or my team gave me the conclusion, they were encouraging me to step back, Mike, step back. I've had this business for 30 years. And 33 years, actually. And my team was, I'm a typical entrepreneur. I don't know if you're this way. It doesn't seem like you're this way, but I'm the idea guy. I'm just like, show me a shiny object in the corner. And I'm like, ooh, and I just throw everything I've got at that. And then another shiny idea. I'm like, ooh, and I don't finish everything I start. I'm passionate about creating products or projects or whatever. Just don't bore me with the details. I'm not a detail guy. I'm a conceptual guy. And a lot of entrepreneurs are conceptual, which drives your team absolutely crazy because we're just starting. I'm like an arsonist, only instead of fires, it's projects, and I'm just not interested in putting them out. So, and I love to create content. I travel around the world speaking at conferences, universities. I love writing. I have columns in magazines, technical magazines, geeky stuff. And so that's where I am fulfilled. The actual routine of running a business, of writing standard operating procedures and checks and balances and making sure our accounting is GAAP, we're within GAAP, and all this stuff is like, I don't want to do that. I'm not good at that. And I don't have an interest in doing it, but I forced myself to do it. So I would do, for every 2 things I get to do that I love and that I'm good at, I had to do 98 things just to earn the right to do the 2. And my team saw that. And it was a little bit selfish on my team's part because if they can get me out of the way, they can actually get stuff done, much more efficiently than when I was there. So they convinced me to give it a try in a very loving, very supportive way. And I'm like, okay. So my hope, my prayers were, if the business can run almost as good as when I was running it, I'll consider that successful. And Jason, the business runs 10 times better without me doing the things that I didn't like, that I wasn't good at, that I just did just to get to the 2 things I really wanted to do. So I'm not involved in day-to-day. I have exited the business, but I'm still the face of the business. People expect me at conferences. People, I have a very technical podcast that I do as well. What I call this is my little podcast. I have my big podcast and my little podcast, relative speaking. And the bigger podcast is the technical one. And I have a good audience there. They know who I am, and the industry that I'm in knows who I am. But I only do things I love. And things I love to do, I'm fairly good at. And my team does all the things that I don't love, that I'm not that great at. And that's what they love. They don't want to do what I'm doing. They don't want to be in front of a camera or a microphone or a lectern or a word processor. They want to get into the weeds. They want to get into the running a company and having great metrics and things like that. I was just into the creation side of it. So it is win-win. Much to my amazement, me exiting made the company bloom to its greater potential. I was the one holding that back. Yeah. And I didn't know that until I stepped out. And I would imagine some of your clients who say, okay, yeah, Jason, let's show me how to exit without exiting. My guess, just based on my experience, is it's not going to be just collect the money and the company won't be hurt. I'll bet the company will actually be even more successful than, because every entrepreneur is holding something back, right, with their company. Richard Branson is a great example. Richard Branson owns more than 100 companies, and he runs 0 of them, right? He's not flying the Virgin Galactica airplanes into space. He's not flying his Virgin Atlantic airplanes. He's not filling them up with fuel, when they pull it up to the gate. He's the spokesperson. He's the brand ambassador. He's Moneypenny, obviously, but he learned a long time ago, I think, with Virgin Records that he's better promoting the brand, flying hot air balloons, being Mr. Playboy, almost like Austin Powers, kind of swaggy kind of guy. That's where he can serve his company best. And when he's involved in the weeds, it doesn't do well. And so I'm just like Richard Branson. I'm just going to make that leap in my head, without the girls on my shoulder, on my arms, and I'm certainly not getting into a hot air balloon. But I think we can learn from that, and I think that exiting the way you describe it will will have a greater return than just not having to do the grind every day, the hustle and grind, as we said earlier. Has that been your experience, that the company actually excels?
Yeah, and certainly what will happen is you test it. You test it. If you step away and it declines, then you're not ready. You've trained your company to rely on you too much, and they don't know how to operate without you. But what you illustrated there, Mike, is that you had built a good company, good teams, good systems, good processes, and they asked you to step down, step out, and it continued to flourish without you. That's the proof that it worked. So there are different versions of that for everybody. But if you want to test it, I think first start with a 2-week vacation where there's no contact. Just do that and see what happens. I just got back. I did a 2-week motorcycle trip out in Colorado with some friends, and there was zero contact with the business for 2 full weeks. And I told everybody, like, I'm totally 100% off grid for 2 weeks. And got back, everything was fine. Like, the company was running. I made, my income didn't take a dip. The revenue didn't take a dip. The clients still got serviced. It was phenomenal. So do a 2-week.
You didn't have to come back from your motorcycle trip and do the apology tour to your customers?
No, I did not. I had another experience. It was back in February of this year. I got really, really sick. It's the sickest I've been, probably top 5 sicknesses of my entire life. It was bad. And ear infection, sinus infection. It was bacterial infection in my lung. It was so bad. It was terrible. I was out for I was almost out for 2 weeks. 1 full week of zero contact because I couldn't. Even if I wanted to, I couldn't contact anybody. And my assistant knew what was happening. She knew I was sick, and I'd canceled the appropriate meetings, that type of thing. But when I came back, I sent a message to all my clients. Hey, sorry, I've been kind of off grid, but here's what happened. And one person sent a message back, said, dude, we didn't even know you were gone. Like, we had no idea. And sorry, I'm glad you're better. And I'm sorry you were sick, but we had no idea. And then another person chimed in and said, isn't that cool that the founder of our mastermind, who teaches all this stuff, like, he was gone for 2 weeks and we didn't even know. So that was validation for me. It's like, okay, this is working. I can even build a coaching company where I can exit without exiting, and it still runs. Then this works.
You earlier you were talking about a couple of coaches. You have a media coach, and I think there was another coach that was helping with your, or maybe that was a media coach. He was helping with your media kit. It's interesting that the coach has a coach.
Oh, yeah.
And even though you're teaching, you're coaching, talk to my audience about the importance of knowing that even the expert doesn't know it all, right? And you, the successful owner of a company, a multimillion-dollar company that does coaching, also have a coach yourself.
Yeah.
That takes a little bit of ego management, and knowing we don't know what we don't know. How valuable is you working with a coach? How valuable has that been for you? And what level of insights does that experience bring the coach?
So if somebody came to me today and said, Jason, I want to start a new business, what do I need? And by the way, I do not coach startups. That's something I do not do. But if you came to me, you said you want to start something, I would say you need a bookkeeper who does not sleep in your home. And you need that's a good point. It can't be your wife, can't be you. It's got to be somebody else. A bookkeeper who does not sleep in your home, and you need a business coach. Day one. And I look at it as essential as if you were starting an ice cream shop, that you would have to buy a freezer. Like, it's that essential.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter that you don't have any cash flow, can't afford it. You have to do it. It's that essential. And the reason I believe that is not because I am a business coach. It's because of what I learned from a business coach. Because when I started a business back in 2010, 2011, I didn't even know there were such things as business coaches. I didn't even understand that conceptually. I'd heard of life coaches, but I'd never heard of business coaches. And it wasn't until I think it was 16. So I'd been in business now for about 5 or 6 years, that I went to this luncheon and a business coach was speaking, and it was like, oh, what there's this thing called business coaches. So I started looking for one, hired one. That is when things changed. That's when our income as a revenue went through the roof. That's when my life started changing, is because I can't see what I'm not looking at. And when you're running a business, what are you looking at? You're myopic. You're looking through blinders down at what you, and as you should. That's what you should be paying attention to. But there's a lot of crap you can't see that are outside those blinders. That's what a coach is for. That's his or her job, is to make sure that they see things that you can't see. They give you perspective that you can't get on your own. They've made mistakes or seen other clients make mistakes that they're going to warn you about before you make them. So you said, what's the value? It's millions of dollars that what it brings. So now today, running my coaching company, I have a coach that I meet with. I actually fly to his office, and this is not usually normal, but it's the way I've got this set up. I go spend a full day with him once a month, and I do a brain dump. We whiteboard stuff out. We talk. And man, I make hundreds of thousands of dollars every time we meet, because something changes, something happens.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I didn't think about that. Okay, I'll give you an example. So I run a coaching company. We're a mastermind. I have 6 coaches in my program. So it's me plus 5 other guys. We have almost 30 members across the country. I want to get to 50 members as soon as possible. That's kind of my threshold I want to get to. And I think new cool stuff could happen. I don't have a delivery issue, like delivering our services. I could be 1,000 members and I really not have to change delivery. It's very cool what we've built here with the Exeter Club. But I don't have a salesperson and I don't have a marketing team. This is just a very small team. I've got a full-time assistant, a few VAs, and one part-time person, and that's it. Well, my business coach, about a month and a half ago, when I met with him, he said, I think you need to hire a salesperson. I said, I can't justify that from the cash flow standpoint. I mean, we're doing okay, but that would be a ton of cash out. He goes, do you understand how sales works? I'm like, of course I understand how sales works. It should pay for itself. He goes, I'm telling you, go do it. Well, I've done it, and we're about to see what's going to happen. But my prediction is that what I'm paying him is going to be tripled or quadrupled within the next 6 months. It's got to. And it took a business coach pushing me in the direction that I already knew I should go, but I hadn't thought about it. Like when I'm saying it out loud to you and your listeners are listening, it's like, well, no crap, Sherlock. Like, of course you got to hire a salesperson. You're at a place you got to be doing that. Well, yeah, but if you were in my shoes, you would have been so busy with everything else, you too would not have thought about it.
You're in the hedge maze. Imagine this hedge maze, right? Like at the end of the movie The Shining, Jack's character, froze to death in this hedge maze, couldn't get out. I often find myself in this maze, trying to look for the exit out or the prize, and you can't see. All you can see is a wall in front of you and to the right of you and behind you, and you don't know what's around the corner. Having a coach is like having a drone with a camera 20 feet above that hedge maze.
Yeah.
They have a different perspective, and they can see around the corner. They can see you're not far from the prize. They can see how to get out or how to get deeper into it, where all we can see is obstacles and things like that. So I have the same experience. I have a business coach that I've used for many years, and she's, when I first started working with her, I thought she was nuts. I'm like, okay, I'm so desperate. What I was doing wasn't working, so I'm okay, fine. Let's see what you can do. And I was very hesitant and skeptical, and her ideas were, in the moment, from my perspective, totally wacky. And, just as an example, and I won't dive down this rabbit hole, but, she said, if you want to sell more equipment, quit talking about your equipment. Stop that. Stop all that advertising. It's just noise. Just stop. And I'm like, what? Like the best way to sell your product is not to talk about your product. Yes. Like, that's crazy. Yes, it sounds crazy, but try it. And we did. But we replaced it with education, with content, with, speaking gigs everywhere, all that stuff. And oh my God, not only did the business soar, the types of customers we attracted were much higher level customers, people who wanted to partner with us, not just people looking for a great deal. And when we led with noise, when I called ourselves high-tech carnies. We were selling high-tech stuff like a carnival barker. And when you lead with that, you attract people that find that attractive. And those aren't necessarily your best customers. So she was right. I couldn't see it. All I saw were the walls and my preconceived notions. What's your best advice? You mentioned what's your best advice for entrepreneurs that want to start creating systems that allow the businesses to thrive without them being there every day? You mentioned maybe just take a little snapshot, leave for 2 weeks incommunicado, and see what happens. That's a confidence builder, or the opposite maybe, depending on what happens. What if someone's watching this or listening to this and says, "Yeah, this is great"? Well, number one, call Jason's team. I'll say that. Number two, what would Jason's team say? Okay, here's where we start. What's the ground zero for that mindset shift?
The first thing that we would start with is you got to understand the mindset of what an entrepreneur should be. An entrepreneur should not be a job owner. An entrepreneur should be a business owner. And that means that you operate the business differently than someone who has a job. There are three things that I believe that you should pay attention to as the entrepreneur, and only three things. And this, I believe, is a universal law. You, as the architect of the business, you should set the vision, communicate the vision, and build the asset. And that's it. If what you're doing every day is not setting the vision, communicating that vision, or building the asset, then you should stop doing it. Other people should be doing it. Automation should be doing it. Systems should be doing it. And that is the first thing I think everybody needs to understand is that is going, if you break that law, if you get involved in washing the bottles, so to speak, you're going to suffer the consequences of that broken law. Once you step back and start paying attention and obeying the law, where you're only setting the vision, communicating the vision, building the asset, that's when things will start changing. So that's more of a mindset thing. But I think from a practical standpoint, what we do, we walk all our clients through is the first thing you'll do is meet with our finance coach, and we're going to go through your financials. We're going to make sure that they're gap aligned, of course. We're going to make sure that that your COGS are listed correctly. We're going to make sure that you don't have, you're not mingling funds in a personal way that's going to hurt your value when you go to exit. The second thing we're going to do is we're going to sit down with you and give you a valuation on your business. We're going to show you how much your business is worth. Because if you don't know how much it's worth, like where are we going? What are we doing here? So we're going to give you a valuation, and then we're going to let you sit down with our legal coach, and we're going to go through your business structure. We're going to make sure that the business structure is correct, that it's tax optimized for your situation, that you're not paying too many taxes to the government. And you're going to make sure that that your structure is set up so that your exit is going to be ready. Like you're ready to exit. And different structures have different benefits on an exit later. And then you're going to meet with our wealth management coach, and we're going to look at your personal finances and find out what do we need to be doing to prepare you for that ultimate exit. Do you have enough money set aside to live the lifestyle that you want once you're not doing the business every day? And then you're going to meet with our mindset coach. The mindset coach is going to kind of help you go, all right, where are you at in all this? Where's your mindset? Are you really ready to take the steps in these directions? Are you still looking at your business as a job? And then the final meeting would be with me. And you'd meet with me and you'd sit down, and we're going to put together an exiter plan based on the X-Plan framework that we've put together that shows you exactly what you need to be doing over the next 12 months to get yourself to where you can, at the very least, exit without exiting, and at the most, sell your company.
Interesting. Let's talk about your podcast for a minute, The Root of All Success. You've interviewed many successful entrepreneurs, as well as me. What common traits or habits do they share? Good or bad?
I think there's some tenacity that entrepreneurs have that the regular Joes don't have. That doesn't mean that there aren't some regular Joes or employees out there that aren't tenacious, but I think there's tenacity. The entrepreneurs that seem to be bullheaded in a way that helps them and hurts them. They'll push through things when when the average person would give up. So I think there's tenacity. I also think that there's coachability. I think the more successful entrepreneurs I see are coachable. They don't think they figured it out, that they're willing to invest in a business coach, for example, or a mastermind. But more than just those practical things, they're seeking. They're listening to podcasts like this. They're reading books, and they're looking for ways to be better every day. Now, that is not the average entrepreneur. That's the successful entrepreneur. The average entrepreneur is head down doing his or her job every day and saying, "Hey, I'm an entrepreneur. Look at me." Okay, congratulations. You have a job. Like you sign your own check, but you have a job.
Yeah, it's like buying one Subway restaurant. You bought
And
yourself a job and running it. Well, pretty much if you own only one. I have a good friend of mine that invested in something similar. It was a bakery, a national chain bakery that specialized in, I won't say the name of the bakery, but you'll figure it out. They specialize in making cakes with holes in the middle and nothing but that. So when she first bought it, I was to myself, I'm like, just bought herself a job. I mean, she's just going to be, whatever she paid for the build out and the franchise fees and the royalties and all that. She just bought herself a job. And then she bought a second store and a third and a fourth and a fifth and a sixth and a seventh over a couple of states. And just a few months ago, she sold all the stores in her state, 5 of them. And, she shared with me what she paid to open these stores and what she cashed out for. Oh my God, Jason, she knew what she was doing. She scaled it. She did not buy herself a job. She bought herself an asset, which appreciated. And her goal was get in, build it up, maximize the value, and say, thank you very much, I'm done. It was a master plan in her head. And I give her a ton of credit. And I was armchair quarterbacking her, dude, you just bought yourself a job. Nope. She made it. It was a great investment. And she put time, she put a lot of work into it. And she still has a couple of stores, vacation money and, whatever, slush fund. But it was such a wise move, but there was intent from the beginning for that.
Yeah.
She had a strategic goal. She accomplished that goal quite effectively. So with your podcast and all the entrepreneurs you've interviewed, have any of your guests shared lessons that completely shifted your perspective on entrepreneurship? Have they ended up being kind of a de facto coach?
I think in certain ways. I'm about to go speak at a Chamber of Commerce luncheon as soon as we get off this the podcast today. And I'll be talking about a framework that I built called the 5 Freedoms Framework. And one of the freedoms that I talk about is the freedom of choice. And I learned this from a podcast guest because I ask every guest, as you probably remember, what is your definition of success? And a lot of the people define success in terms of the freedom that they get with success, whether it's money freedom, time freedom, that type of thing. But this guy said, success for me is freedom to choose what I do when I want to do it. Like the freedom to choose every day, like have that control over choice. And nobody had ever said that to me before, and I'd never heard anybody say it. And today, looking back, it's not even that groundbreaking. But at the moment, for me, it was like, oh, what does that mean? And as I started to dissect this was in 2021. This is a long time ago. And as I started to dissect that and think about that, I thought, yeah, that is one of the ultimate freedoms, isn't it? The freedom to choose. Like you don't tell me what I have to do, when I have to do it. It's the freedom to choose. I chose to be on your podcast today. And you didn't tell me to do this. I chose this. I choose to get up and do what I want to most days. I'm not dictated. And to me, that type of freedom is one of the most precious.
Yeah. I think you asked me when I was on your show what my definition of success was. And it's freedom. Because freedom, depending on my version of freedom, that might take some money. So there has to be financial freedom. There's time freedom. There's family freedom. There's friend freedom. There's all these different, geographical freedom. There's all these different definitions of freedom, and I think that's a great answer. I've ended every show. This is episode number 30, and on this new podcast, and I've ended every episode with asking a very similar question. I'm going to just throw a little caveat into it. How did you define success when you first started your business journey, and how has that changed your definition of success today?
I think success back then when I first started, honestly, was just being able to pay the bills because I didn't know how that was going to turn out. I figured if I could make enough money to offset what I used to make as a school teacher, which wasn't much, and perhaps even offset what my wife was bringing in, then this would be successful. I remember, my business partner at the time, he's like, how much money do you really need? Like, what do you have to just live your life? And I said, $3,000 a month. Because that's all I needed. It's like if I had $3,000 a month, I was good.
That was nirvana, right? Right.
Yeah, that was. So for me, the success was defined very simply at the time as just financially being able to live, just not excess, but just to be able to live. Today, for me, success is being able to choose what I want to do, when I want to do it, with whom and where. And for me, I want to have enough money that I never have to ask money permission to do what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that, to me, that's success.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, Jason Duncan, thank you so much for being my guest today. And for my audience, if you're watching this on YouTube, look down here. It says see more. You'll get information on how to reach out to Jason's company. And if you are an entrepreneur, maybe you can reach out and find out about this whole exit without exiting thing. It worked for me. I didn't know Jason then. I wish I did. I would have come to this conclusion sooner. But that whole exit without exiting thing has just been nothing but successful for me, and I know that Jason's clients feel the same way. And if you're listening to this on your favorite podcast app, you'll get information on Jason's company if you look at the show notes there. Jason, thank you so much for being my guest today. I really appreciate the sage advice, and it's nice to see your face again.
It's been an honor, Mike. Thank you.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for joining me on this episode of the Reluctant Entrepreneur Podcast. A special thanks to Jason Duncan for being my guest on the show. You can find the Reluctant Entrepreneur Podcast on all major podcast platforms and on our YouTube channel. We've already recorded several upcoming episodes with fascinating guests, so be sure to subscribe and get notified when new episodes drop. New episodes are released twice a month on the first and third Tuesday. If you're watching this on YouTube, give us a like and subscribe. Those 2 simple clicks really help us expand our reach. If you're an entrepreneur or know someone who would make a great guest, I'd love to hear from you. Visit reluctantentrepreneur.podcast.com to apply or recommend a guest. You can also reach me directly at mike@mikeconrad.com. That's Conrad spelled with a K. And a shameless plug if you're interested in my book, The Reluctant Entrepreneur, Anatomy of a Business Startup from Uncertainty to Unstoppable. It's available in paperback and Kindle on Amazon and as an audiobook on both Audible and Amazon. Thanks again for listening or watching. Until next time, be unstoppable.